Hi class, these are your notes for 2.2 Simple and Compound Interest. 2.1 covers intro to spreadsheets, meaning Google Sheets or Excel, whichever you feel comfortable using. And that actually is just going to be sprinkled in throughout this section. So this section these notes you'll use for your MyOpenMath for 2.1 and 2.2. As for 2.0, that is just a refresher on percentages to make sure you are doing okay with all this interest talk that we will be having throughout this unit. So also before you start these notes, make sure you use your textbook to define compounding. Once you have that defined, and it might not sit terribly well with you, we will build off that definition throughout these videos and start the notes after you use your textbook to define it. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is simple interest versus compound interest. So we are going to go ahead and give you the definition. The definition for simple interest is only earned or paid on the original amount. So that's the key, the original amount. So example, it says you invest $500 and you earn 6% interest every year for 5 years. In actuality, it should say simple so we know what kind of interest. But since it's in this example, we know it's going to be simple. We want to know what our balance will be for the 5th year. So year 1, we start with 500 and we earn 6% interest, which is going to be 0.06. And if we use Desmos or whatever calculator, I'm going to do 500 times 0.06 and I get $30. So my balance then is going to be 500 plus the 30 I earned. So I get $530 year 1. Now year 2 says, well, we have to go off the original amount again. So we start with 500 and we're earning the 6%. Well, we don't have to do that calculation again, so that's just 30. But now my balance is going to be 530 plus another 30, so I have $560. Now hopefully you're okay with year 3, 4, and 5. It's going to be the same amount, right? Because I'm always going off the original amount that I invested. So this is going to be 30 as well, but this will be 590 because I'm adding the 30 to the 560. Well, we know this is also going to be 30 for year 4. If I add 30 to 590, I get 620. And now year 5, once again, we get 30. So my total after 5 years will be $650. So that means the total interest we've earned in 5 years, well, let's see, if we started with 500, but we ended with 650, it looks like just putting my money into this account has earned me $150. That's pretty nice. I didn't do anything. It just sat there. But the last thing I really want to do is do this 5 times, right? There has to be a nice formula I can use. Well, typically with these formulas, A equals, okay, so remember we started with our original amount, which we're going to name P. So what that P stands for is principal. Then what we did is we added the $30, right? But how many times did we add the $30? It looks like we added it once, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we were looking for 5 years. So that's why we take our original amount or our principal, we multiply it by the rate, and then we multiply it by the time. So let me get a different pen so this stands out. So this right here is known as principal. This is known as your rate. And this is time in years. So this would be way easier. So I don't have to fill out a table every single time to say, okay, well, like I want to figure out what it would be at year 5. I would do A equals, I start with my original amount, also known as my principal. I'll use that often in these notes, plus my principal times my rate times how many years I needed it for. So if I go to my Desmos, 500 plus 500 times 0.06 times 5, we get $650. And hopefully you can find ease in knowing this formula versus, finding this out every time, right? Filling out a chart 5 times is a little bit time consuming. All right, now let's compare this to compound interest. So compound interest, the definition is interest is earned on the original amount and any interest added to the account. So now I'm not just building off the original amount, I'm building off every previous investment I've made. In other words, every previous year. So let's see, this is an example. You invest $500 at a rate of 6% interest compounded yearly. This will become important. So when you see this compounded word, that's when you're going to use this technique. Versus when you saw simple, you're going to use this formula right here. All right, so let's get started. We have year 1. All right, I'm earning 6% interest, so I started with 500 and I multiply it by the 0.06, and we already know this, we get 30. So year 1 is going to be just like the simple. We end up with $530. Here's the big difference. Year 2, we're going to take the previous amount, and that's what gets multiplied by the interest rate. So you can see here that our interest is going to change yearly, where in simple, it always stayed the same. So if I do 530 times 0.06, just to save some time in this video, because I'm sure we can all use our calculators, I get 3180. Well, if I add 530 plus 3180, I get 561.80. All right. Well, now I'm going to do the previous year. So now I have 561.80, and I multiply it by the interest, and I end up getting 33.71. Well, if I add that to my previous year, and just because it's space, I'm running out of space, I get $595.51. And I should put the dollar sign. Please get in that habit. It is important. Well, year 4, I take my previous amount and I multiply it by the interest rate, and I get 35.73. If I add that to my previous year, I end up getting $631.24. All right, we have one more to go. Take my previous amount, $631.24. Multiply it by the interest, and I get $37.87. I add that to my previous amount, and I get $669.11. So here you can see, and with compounded interest, our interest changed yearly, where again with simple interest, our interest stayed the same every single time. Well, let's see what our total interest was here. Well, our end result was $669.11. Take away what you ended up putting in, and what do you know? We got $169.11. So you can see that compounding lets us earn more money. So something to think about when you're shopping around to invest money. I mean, if you're anything like me, I'm not investing tons. But when that option arises, it shows you to shop around a little bit more intelligently. Okay, so our formula here is going to be A. I start with my principal, aka original amount, and I multiply it by the 1 plus my rate, and I raise it to the number of years. So once again, this is your principal, this is your rate, and this is your years. All right, let's see if this makes sense to us. Let me go ahead and change colors. I have this A, and my principal is $500. I multiply it by 1 plus my rate is 0.06, and I raise it to 5 years. So let's go ahead. I have 500 times 1 plus 0.06, close those parentheses, and I'm going to raise it to the 5th power. And what do you know? I get $669.11. So $600.69.11. Now, the reason this 1 is here is because if you were just multiplying it by 0.06, it would get smaller. So that 1 is taking into effect that we're always building off of our original amount. And then it's growing 0.6%. So here is, I'm going to just label these. This is for simple interest, and this is for compounding interest. Now the nice thing is your spreadsheets will do a lot of this work for you, and that will be in the next video.